is a must with direct integrations to carriers, load boards, and capacity tools. The TIE TMS software sets up brokers like you to potentially save 11 hours per week by finding load coverage 70% faster than other TMS systems. Tie it all together with the TIE TMS software. Sign up for a free demo now.
I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been winning all the war. And I've been shutting down the stars.
Welcome to Put That Coffee Down, the freight sales show for closers. My name's Kevin Hill. I'm your host today. We have 26 exciting minutes coming up here at noon Eastern time here on FreightWaves TV. We have a special guest from Varstar Alliance, Emanuel Patrascu, talking about how the pandemic has altered how we prospect, how we go out and make sales to this new world. So we're going to get to him in just a few minutes, but we're going to start it off right now with some market news. You know, the market's turning. We're seeing spot rates come down. What is shipper behavior? And we're going to look into that. This is a golden oldie, one of our first freight research projects here at FreightWaves back in fall of 2019. We did this survey. You can see it up on the screen right now. And it was all about a turning market. So this first graph up here, how far do spot rates need to fall below contract rates before you start moving loads to the spot market? This was to shippers. And, you know, if you take a look at this, we are about 25% down from the highs that we saw, you know, January, February of this year, or the latest highs, I should say. And by the time you get to 25%, just about everybody, about 90% of all shippers have started moving some portion of their freight to the spot market as part of cost saving. So if we go to the second chart here, so how long do spot rates need to stay at these depressed levels before you start moving some of your loads into the spot market? So immediately, like if you take in March, you know, people are looking for trends, long-term trends, not a blip in the market before they take the exercise, take the resources, time and energy to really look at moving, you know, maybe doing some shorter duration bids, you know, moving some of that freight that's traditionally contract. We've seen tender rejections fall dramatically. So if we can throw that back up again, guys, or go back right there, perfect. So we're looking at 1 to 3 months. So 1 to 3 months, about 50% of shippers have moved some part of, though they're starting to move, though they're starting to rebid, though they're starting to work on their contracted lanes, whether moving that into the spot market or rebidding. And, you know, by the time you get to 4 to 6 months down the road, then, you know, 85% of shippers have moved a portion of that to the spot market. We go to the next graph, you know, how much do you move? Shippers' movement to the spot market, how much of their freight? And it's about a third, just under a third, about 30%. So 3 out of every 10 loads are, you know, after about 3 months of 25% drop in the market, you are going to see about, you know, almost a third of freight from shippers start easing the way either back into the spot market, or you're going to see shorter term bids. You're going to see a lot of rebidding, right? Because the market has shown not to be a blip. It's a trend, and it's kind of the new state of the market. And that's what we're kind of seeing right now. We're knocking on the door. I think we're probably 60 days in right now to the spot market going down, you know, that 25% right now. So we're about 60 days in, so we're really going to see some movement in May, I think. I think if spot rates, rejections, load volumes at these levels, over the next 30 days, we're going to see a lot of movement back into the spot market by shippers, and you're probably going to get a lot of calls from your customers wanting to renegotiate whatever rates you have in place. So be prepared for that. You know, it's a cyclical nature, trucking, so you have to ride the waves. Just like here at FreightWaves, you get to ride the waves, and you know there's tight markets, there's loose markets, and you have to be prepared to sell through both of those, right? Both of those where just getting a truck is the most valuable thing you can do, to situations like what we'll probably go through in 2022 for the remainder of the year, where finding that truck loses its value, right? It is about different services that you can offer. And with that, I'd like to welcome our guest to the show right now, Emanuel. He's the Director of Sales, or Logistics and Sales Manager over at Varstar Alliance. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Kevin. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Where are you based out of? Michigan?
Wayne, Michigan.
Nice.
That's
nice.
We're one of our major. So.
yeah, that is nice. There's the Midwest, Michigan freight brokerages are always great. Always great to hear from you guys. So we want to talk about how sales has changed through the pandemic. You have a pre-pandemic world. We are living, hopefully, in a post-pandemic world right now. Hopefully, it is post. We can say that it's a post-pandemic world, and I kind of wanted to get your take on what changes you've seen when it comes to freight brokerage sales, especially prospecting, but throughout the entire sales cycle.
Yeah, so in order to talk about sales, you got to know what you're selling. So just some backstory about us. Varstar Alliance is a transportation and logistics company. We're based in Wayne, Michigan. It's one of our main terminals. We were founded in 2018 by our parent company, Folger Transport, and then Folger Transport and our sister company, USA Folger Transport, operate as our asset divisions, and they run all their freight operations through us. So we kind of operate as a hybrid of sorts. With regard to how sales changed during the pandemic, and in a hopefully a post-pandemic world, we saw that a lot of teams were broken up initially. That first when the lockdowns hit, a lot of companies went into the work from home or remote strategy, where people were working from home. So the teams were broken up. People weren't able to manage, organize, exchange information in person like they were before. And you kind of had a learning curve with everyone, effectively being forced to work from home. They had to get comfortable with using technology instead of, working face-to-face, organizing face-to-face, planning face-to-face. So, people had to get accustomed to using Zoom, Google Meetings, group chats. We went from organizing ourselves, meeting every single day in person, to having to work over email and over Zoom. And that effectively made prospecting a lot more difficult and making sales difficult, because before you could work together, in person rather than have technology as sort of a barrier. You had to learn how to use Zoom. Took a little bit for everyone to get comfortable using it. And that doesn't go just for the sales team side. That also goes for the companies that we were reaching out to. They also had the same learning curve they had to get used to and get accustomed to. Little to no office access, equipment. Some people didn't have access to their office phones or their desktops, or if they did have computers at home. Just working from home was a learning curve. You had to find a happy medium between work life and your professional life, remaining professional, being able to work with the group. Generating leads and prospecting became more difficult just because making that initial point of contact became more difficult since people didn't have access to their offices or they weren't in their offices. So it was a lot harder to reach out.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? Because everyone seems to be in a flexible work environment still. And that's one of the sticky parts of the pandemic that I think will continue to some degree. So we're used to be able to let's cold call, right? To get in touch with people, to call a number, right? A main number, a business number, and ask around, see who we should speak to, or have a direct line to a prospect or even to a customer a lot of times. That's not necessarily the case anymore. With flexible work environments, if it's 100% remote to 25% remote, they're not always there in the office. So how do you really get in touch with people who aren't at their office number? A lot of companies now are switching off telephones, and everyone's just using their personal cell phone anyway.
Yeah, so again, that was probably one of the biggest, disadvantages initially that we found. Working from home, people were cut off from their phones, or at least their office phones. Not everybody has their office phone connected to their cell phones. What we found was a lot of companies were actually using Zoom as a switchboard. So before, you'd call that main number and then you'd get redirected to the right person. Now it was heavily reliant on people knowing how to use Zoom and then having their computers on. So a couple times, what happened was we would reach out and the operator would explain, hey, like, we're using Zoom. I can transfer you. If they'll answer, I'm not sure, because it's heavily dependent on them having their computers on, knowing how to use them. So, I had one particular example was that I reached out to a contact, a lead I had, a prospect, and the operator told me, I'll try to transfer you, but just so you know, their computer's been off for about 3 months. So there's like little to no chance that you'll end up getting in contact with them. Yeah. So, and that was a pretty popular trend, especially for all 2020, for the better part of 2021. And even now we're still seeing that happening because people are still getting accustomed. People are still getting used to it. While it might be, I guess, the new normal for some people, there are still a lot of individuals and companies that are still getting to the point of being accustomed and getting used to this, working remotely and getting used to the technology. So this really pushed us to move away from making cold calls. If we were seeing like a 5 to 10% return on time and investment in terms of making that initial point of contact with a cold call before the pandemic, now we're seeing like a 1 to 2%. So out of like 100 phone calls you're making, maybe you're getting in contact with 1 or 2 people, and even then, like, that's just the initial point of contact. From there, you got to maintain contact and follow up. So that was very difficult. It was just cold calling as a whole has been returning less of a yield, like yielding less of a return, because people are moving to this new, just like you said, they're using their cell phones more. There's a push to use the emails more. And this meant we had to figure out a different way of reaching people. We kind of had to come up with a new strategy. It became very ineffective for us to cold call. And
that's interesting, right? Because challenges create opportunities, and it's what you do with those challenges that really define where you go and your success. You can't do anything about the challenges. You can't take the pandemic away. You can't change the world, right? All you can do is change your strategy. One of the positives that I think have come through Zoom and video meetings, though, is that all the cold calls that you're just doing on the phone, you're developing a relationship squarely over the phone. Now, once you get to that relationship part or that talking part, you can do face-to-face meetings. I think in 2019, certainly in 2018, hardly anyone ever turned on a camera. It just wasn't done for whatever reason. We just didn't use cameras at all. And now somewhat rude if you don't, right? It's just natural now, at least for me. I don't know if it's that way for everybody, but you just turn on the camera and everything's face-to-face. It's virtual, but it's face-to-face. But a lot of times, I've had a lot of customers throughout my lifetime, especially in freight brokers, I've never met. I've never seen who these people are. But now you get it, once you get to that point, you can develop that face-to-face relationship no matter where you are. You don't have to book a trip anywhere necessarily, right? You can at least build part of that relationship face-to-face. Now, if we go back to the challenges, right, the cold calling, you have to set yourself up. You got to go prospect somehow. So what are you relying on more now?
So again, before, cold calling was difficult prior to the pandemic, just as a whole. It was a lot of times hard to reach someone. Pandemic made it even more difficult, and just making that initial point of contact and building a relationship. So we've started relying heavily on social media and emails as our main strategy of making that initial point of contact and maintaining a relationship. We found that building a connection with individuals prior to reaching out is, yielding a lot more success in terms of just getting that initial point of contact rather than just reaching out over a cold call. So our strategy is mainly just, connecting first, actively engaging prospects, forming some kind of familiarity between us and the person we're reaching out to before we reach out initially. Whereas with the cold call, you'd reach out, you were just, a phone number on a screen, no name most times, no picture, no identity, and that already, it's like a very big gap that you got to get over when you make a phone call or a cold call. Here, we're trying to interact before reaching out to someone. And we found that people are much more willing to respond when they've had some sort of engagement with you prior to, reaching out.
Yeah. So Emanuel, you're talking about reaching out, engagement. Can you describe that? I mean, what's worked best for you?
So, for example, using LinkedIn and Sales Navigator, LinkedIn in particular, building a connection, building a network, building a circle, if you will, joining the same groups, having similar connections, and again, building that familiarity. When someone looks at a profile, or when we reach out after we've already engaged, we make sure to have a period of engagement before. Once you've engaged with that person, they've got a name. They've got a picture they can go to. They can click on a profile and go right to it and see, this is a living, breathing human being. It's not just a phone number. And again, that's bridging the gap of the unknown. It's bringing familiarity. It also allows for greater transparency between us and the customers we want to reach out to. We have an identity now, and then it's easier for us to view the customers and them to view us as well. And we found about a 50 to 60% success rate in terms of getting an initial point of contact using the strategy of building a circle, building a network, being in the same groups, engaging with the contact in some form of way, or like with the prospect prior to making that initial outreach, that initial sales pitch of reaching out, presenting our services, presenting who we are, and seeking to get onboarded with them.
Have you guys created any groups yourselves?
Excuse me?
Have you created any groups yourselves?
At this point, no. I mean, internally we have, but like on LinkedIn, not yet. We just join a lot of groups. We participate. We try to engage, especially with the prospects and the leads we've got. That's who we try to maintain a close relationship with. And what that's resulted in that we've seen over like the last 8 months, for example, when we do get to the point of RFQ or RFI, all right, and we start the onboarding process and we go to these meetings where we're in the Zoom meetings, because we've built a relationship with, 1, 2, or 3 people already, they do the presenting for us. Like we walk in and they already know who we are. When we start the meeting, it's more an informational meeting on what they do and how we can further integrate with them. It's not so much us presenting ourselves because we spend the time building the connection, building the network, and establishing that familiarity with who we are and what we do. So that's really important, as a prospecting strategy versus making a cold call initially, where it was just a lot of cold calling, a lot of initial presentation. Now there's a face, there's an identity, there's familiarity because we've built a network, and we're building a network and building relationships with the prospects that we reach out to.
Do you wish you started doing this earlier, even pre-pandemic? Do you find the yield higher than cold calling, and it's just more effective?
Yeah, so I'm seeing, again, like I said, we're getting about a 50 to 60% return on like our outreach. So for example, yesterday I had one of the agents that's part of my team. They have spent the last 3 weeks building, contact, engaging some of the prospects that they had. And of the 11 outreaches they did yesterday, they received 6 initial contact back. 2 of which said, hey, follow up with us at a later time. 4 of which gave them their emails and said, hey, reach out to us. We want this information again. And then 1 of them submitted a rate request sheet. So we're already on track just from those 11. With 4 of them, we're in the works of getting on board, and 1 of them is, we're in the process of submitting rates. Whereas before, you're getting a 5 to 10% success rate, and from there, a lot of times you're getting turned down or told, hey, wait for a later time. So we're seeing a lot more success in getting from the initial point of contact to onboarding. Do
you think, agents, employees, freight brokers in general, do you think they're much more accepting of this method of prospecting? Do you think they enjoy it much more than cold calling? Because I know I do, right? I know I do. It's like a little game with me. Cold calling, while I do it, it's just not always that enjoyable, right? There's only so many times you can get your teeth kicked in each day, right? I mean, it works, but I find it much more enjoyable, much more of a game. I can gamify reaching out on social media and interacting with people, and kind of not really sliding in, but having genuine conversations instead of always pitching.
Right. And then we found that to be the case.
Yeah, that is much more accepting, much more buy-in across the board for prospecting with these methods rather than picking up the phone 100 times a day.
Yep.
Great. I guess it goes back into building a culture of prospecting. It's much easier to build a culture of prospecting throughout your organization through this type of engagement, right, on social media, rather than having a ton of leads to call each and every day.
Yeah. So building or instilling that culture of prospecting, it starts a lot with support, so we support our agents, our team members, and that goes from the top down as well. Our administrators are always reaching out, making sure that the team has, the right equipment, the right software, that we're happy with the tools that we're using to prospect regularly. The administrators of Varstar reach out, make sure that the team's satisfied. They have us join the meetings and calls for, new tools that they're considering adding on to like our available tools and software that we can use to better prospect, to better ourselves in terms of making sales. So regularly supporting the team, with infrastructure. And also we have like a social support system as well. We have a very no shame policy where if someone needs help reaching out or is a little stuck with following up or something like that, we make sure that the whole team comes together as best as we can, because again, some people are still working remotely. We come together to figure out how can we move forward, how can we help each other out, because that's part of keeping everyone motivated to continue prospecting, and also building the mindset that we need to grow. Varstar wants to grow. We want to establish ourselves as a reputable and trustable transportation company and service provider in the industry. So we got to build the mindset that we need to grow in order to establish ourselves. And honestly, probably the best ingredient in establishing this prospecting mentality and culture within the team and the team as a whole is the results from the process. That's the ultimate ingredient, because when you're getting results, just like you said, whereas before cold calling was a lot harder, a lot more difficult, less personable. Now, because we're using social media and using Zoom, it becomes much more personable, much easier to connect with people, and then much easier to get a response and move forward. So that's really helping motivate not just our team, but the other teams in Varstar as well, grow as a whole and continue wanting to grow and prospecting and looking to acquire new customers.
Is it more difficult to tie activity into results, or what kind of activity you need to do on a daily basis if you're networking and reaching out on social media? Those metrics, right? The 100 calls, you get this return. It's very easy to measure and manage. I guess the metrics for activity-based, what you need to do activity-based to get the results you need is a little bit grayer in this method.
Yeah. So with regard to activity-based, when you see that people are responding, when you see that you're able to form relationships, when you're networking, essentially, building those relationships, it's helping to spur the team into wanting to prospect more, because you're getting a return. It's not just, again, you're not just making a phone call, no identity, no relationship. It's like a conversation like we're having right now. It's less awkward, less cold, more warm, more, I guess you could say it's more professional, because we're able to converse like two individuals. We're able to build a relationship and familiarity with each other. And that's, again, really helping the prospecting team to grow and want to grow and to continue prospecting.
It definitely is. Emanuel, thanks so much for joining us today. How does our audience reach out and connect with you on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, whatever's out there?
So the best way would probably be to reach out to me via LinkedIn, Emanuel Patrascu. Just reach out to me, connect with me, shoot me a message, and we can go from there. You can also visit us at www.varstaralliance.com for further information. But again, LinkedIn is probably the best way to get in touch with us. We're very active. All of our agents are very active. And I look forward to continuing the conversation on there, getting to know you, and growing and prospecting and making sales in this new environment.
Perfect. Thank you so much again for your time. And we're connected, but we'll start engaging. Throw me over some good groups to join, and I'll join those and get in there and mix it about a little bit.
Will do. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate your time.
You bet. Thanks, Emanuel.
Take care.
You bet. There we go. So a new way to prospect, and prospecting is the lifeblood. Brent Orsuga, I shared an Uber with him back from TIA, San Diego, to the airport, and I'll never forget, he was on the show a couple years ago. We'll have him back on very soon. His activity and attitude as a salesperson are the only two things you really control. You can't control any of the results per se. There's going to be bad breaks and good breaks, but attitude and activity, if you come in with a great attitude, do a lot of activity, good things will happen. You're setting yourself up for luck. So you make your own luck, And another way to make your own luck is to join us next week, Monday and Tuesday, May 9th and 10th in Northwest Arkansas. It's the future of supply chain. We have an array of great technology companies that are going to fly in. They're going to do live demos, 7 minutes on stage. And this is really fun. 7 minutes on stage at 7:00. Lights shut off, microphone shuts off. You got to do no PowerPoint. You got to demo your tech. It's always great. JB Hunt will be out there, as well as a number of different companies. I have a couple fireside chats, Ben Gordon being one of those with Cambridge Capital, and also Mr. Bill Driegert from Uber Freight. And then we'll Put That Coffee Down as well. So come out. If you haven't bought your ticket yet, you can still buy tickets. You can still get your plane ticket. You can still meet us out there. And until then, I'll see everyone in Arkansas.
I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been winning all the war. And I've been shutting down the stars.